Social emotional support is essential for young people who are consistently impacted by adversity. And that support begins with adult responses. Here's a fun fact. Over the course of K through 12 education, young people spend nearly 16,000 hours with teachers and educators in their lives. This shows that social emotional support is not about a curriculum. It's not about an updated SEO poster. It's not about a program block built into a jam-packed schedule. It's not about having the best school therapist. It's about really understanding the importance of those small moments when a student's behavior signals a silent plea for help that sometimes goes unrecognized. It's in the tone we choose. It's the interpretation we adopt. It's the consistency we bring. And this work can't be done by one person or in one place. It takes a village. And that a village is only as stable as the emotional regulation of the adults inside it. Well, let's get to it. Once again, I'm Raymond Omar Long, your emotional support systems advocate and strategist. And today on the show, we're going to explore why the adult response is the most important intervention and how and what educators can do in real classroom settings and real classroom moments that give young people a much needed green light to be great. You know, this episode is going to draw heavily from a book titled What Happened to You? Conversations on Trauma, Resilience, and Healing by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. But my understanding of social emotional support has also been shaped over the years by some other resources, and I want to share some of those with you today. Books like The Whole Brain Child by Dr. Daniel Siegel and Dr. Tina Payne Bryson. Books like The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. And Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, Growth Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck. These authors over the years have helped me better understand how the brain develops, how stress impacts learning, and how adult belief and consistency can shape student outcomes. So let's jump into our conversation. First, let's talk about how instruction from teachers and educators cannot land inside of dysregulated brains. So let's step into a real classroom. Imagine this, an expert teacher with great intentions prepares to teach a math lesson. The math problem is on the board. The room is set up to engage multiple learning styles. But as soon as this lesson begins, a student sighs loudly. Another one blurts out. One, he shuts down completely. One stares at their paper like it's written in another language. I was there. I felt the shift. You can probably feel the shift listening to the story. It happens fast. And I had the opportunity to reflect with this teacher on that moment. And this new teacher told me that she really didn't know what to do. And her only response is she would keep going so that the students who were capable of learning at that time could get what they needed. And I understand why you would make that decision at that time. It's probably, the best decision she could make at the moment. But this response, it won't address the academic achievement and emotional support gaps that are rampant in so many of our schools today. I mean, every disengaged student has a different story, a different set of problems to address. But the solution is rooted in social emotional support. Students living with trauma, they need support. Students dealing with undiagnosed learning disabilities, they need emotional support. Students with unconventional learning styles, they need emotional support. I know this oh too well. I underperformed in primary and secondary school. And once I was able to prove myself academically, after going on to earn a bachelor's degree and a master's degree as a non-traditional college student, I became really curious about the type of support I would have needed to succeed earlier in life. And what I've learned from reflecting on my own journey and being a part of so many young people's interventions that were all aimed at changing behavior in a learning environment, I believe the foundation of student outcomes, the outcomes that we want, is student social emotional support. I've introduced the concept of yellow and red lights that represent what you all may know as adverse childhood experiences. And students whose lives are consistently affected by those experiences are living in a constant state that prevents them from being present in the learning environment. And it's also important to note just how many children and youth are experiencing learning and behavioral challenges that are related to trauma. This isn't just a few children. I mean, studies show that between 30 and 50% of children in public school have 3 or more ACEs. If you do any research on ACEs, you'll quickly find how devastating that really is. Growing up, my behavior was described as daydreaming, unfocused, lazy, and uninterested. And I'll say this, all of these descriptions seemed accurate on the surface, or maybe at face value. But you see, I don't ever remember an educator or a teacher asking why I was disinterested, or why I was daydreaming, or why did I seem unfocused or lazy. Across 7 different schools, 3 school districts, and 2 different cities, no one ever asked why. And as an adult, I can admit at one point I was very angry. I felt like I was set up to fail because the system failed me. And the system, in a way, it did fail me. But this is what I know to be true. I know I had teachers, educators, mentors, and administrators like you who believed in me. But the system that they were forced to operate in, it was not set up to offer the type of level of social emotional support a child living with the constant adversity I had to face needed. And then the one time a school became really interested in my story, it ended with a home visit from a social worker who threatened to remove my sister and me from under the loving care of my mother. And their primary reason was because they wondered if her physical disability would allow her to fulfill her role. This is what happened when good intentions can have a negative impact because it's not rooted in social emotional support. This is a classic example of, the old saying, a school, a person worrying about the wrong thing. And so these different descriptions became characteristics of me that I still fight today in adulthood. Externally, it looked like disengagement, but internally, it was stress. I remember being the young person staring at worksheets and not fully understanding it, and making a decision as a child that it was safer to look uninterested, to disassociate rather than admit confusion, because confusion, it felt risky. Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah, in their book, What Happened to You, they offer insight into what may have been happening to me and what is more likely happening to the students living through constant adversity in your classrooms and your after-school programs. Oprah brought up this point. She mentioned that students most likely don't have an idea there's an underlying cause for their struggles. So they end up taking the path of least resistance and they adopt the worldview of them, that they're dumb, slow, or lazy. It's a cycle of failure that chips away at their self-esteem until the student becomes so frustrated or ashamed that they give up, is what she said. Dr. Perry provided an amazing response. He mentioned a child who's struggling is not going to say, this poor teacher simply doesn't understand state-dependent functioning and the impact of trauma on my ability to learn. He's not, the student is going to say, oh, my teacher should be helping me regulate. They just say, I must be dumb. I must be incapable. They say things like, My mother and father were bad at math, so I'm bad at math too. Just imagine how many children are sitting in school with trauma related memories that can be activated by innocent cues in the classroom. Remember, in this book, Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah, they talk about how the things we experience in the present moment is filtered by the lower part of our brains before getting to the cortex. All incoming sensory information from the present moment is compared to and influenced by the memories of previous experiences and is first processed in the lower, more reactive areas of the brain before reaching the rational thinking areas. Now, imagine this. Being able to feel safe with other people is probably the single most important aspect of mental health. It's people need to feel safe. Young people need to feel like things are happening with them, not to them, not managed, not corrected. They need to feel safe. So oftentimes when a student snaps back after correction, we would like more teachers to pause and ask and think, is this defiance or is this some sort of activation? Because through the professional development and workshops, through our parent organization, Long Impact Group, we can train teachers and teachers can realize that when the brain detects threat, embarrassment, exposure, relational tension, it activates protection systems. I've worked with young people who were labeled as having behavioral problems in a variety of settings. But I learned when you slow down and listen, you discover that they didn't sleep well. They were worried about home. They were embarrassed about reading aloud. They didn't really understand the material, but they were afraid to say so. What looked like disrespect was often stress. And here's, I think, a key takeaway for educators, for teachers. Regulation has to precede instruction, always, every time. Students test stability before they trust it. They are silently asking, are you a safe place? Are you steady? Are you consistent? And when the answer becomes yes, resistance, it drops. So remember, your interpretation determines if your classroom, if your school building is a safe place for students. And on the next episode, we'll talk about how it's important that you're consistent with how you interpret the behaviors of young people who are constantly facing adversity. Until next time, this is the Greenlight to Be Great podcast with the Raymond Omar Long. And thank you, every teacher and every educator, every youth worker that's listening for what you do to empower young people. See you next time.